The presentation is about BI and analytics, enabling business users to analyze data. So not the data scientists, the experts, but the people working in a line of business, basically, right? So the non-technical users, and enabling them how to do data analytics. My name is Sebastian Derwisch. I'm a data scientist at BARC, and as Ivan already mentioned it, BARC is an analyst company. So what do we analyze? We analyze the market for business intelligence, data science, for planning, for CRM, so different sectors, different market segments all around digital transformation. And we provide a portfolio out of consulting, research, and we also organize events on these issues. So if you think about how to enable business users to analyze data, I think there are two perspectives basically that you have to take. And one is the technology side, so how you could actually use technology to enable business users to analyze data. How you could actually also use technology to compensate maybe for a lack of knowledge of business users. And the other side is sort of like what business users need to bring to the table. So what kind of knowledge they need to possess to analyze data. And I want to sort of shed light on both of these aspects, and I want to start with the technology aspect here. So what we see if we look at the business intelligence space, or generally like the market for data preparation, business intelligence, advanced analytics, is that these markets are sort of growing together. I mean, this is mainly driven by business intelligence software vendors. But we see that formerly separate markets, business intelligence, which was all about reporting, advanced analytics, which is all about the provision of advanced algorithms, and data preparation, so these classical ETL processes, they are actually growing together here. So business intelligence vendors are more and more integrating advanced analytics capabilities, so algorithms, machine learning algorithms, and also data preparation capabilities. And at the intersection, there is a new market segment forming, which is data discovery. Yeah? I mean, so basically a new market segment which is driven by certain meta trends, right? The one is commoditization. So we see that providing basic reports has become a commodity. So you could actually find this in comparable quality with a lot of BI vendors. So there's the need to differentiate. So you actually integrate, or vendors are integrating new functionalities. And as advanced analytics and AI actually is a hype topic, a lot of vendors are integrating these functionalities. And then there's self-service. So business users are actually demanding a lot of functionalities because they want to analyze data themselves now. They want to analyze them visually, but they also want to use advanced algorithms because, as I said, it's a hype topic, right? There's a lot of talk about it, so people really want to get their hands into data analysis here. And the target user of the data discovery space basically is the business analyst, right? And the business analyst is of course not a data scientist, so he is still working in a line of business. He's not as skilled as the data scientist in terms of data analytics, but he is more knowledgeable about business processes than the data scientist. So to that respect, he actually provides a very important link of business processes into analytics teams. So he forms an integral part of analytics teams, providing this business know-how. And to actually be able to sort of like come up with new use cases, because this is his main task in the analytics process, he also analyzes data himself. So he pre-qualifies new use cases using visual analysis, but also advanced analytics. So what are actually like the necessary functionalities or the necessary tasks in analyzing data before we look at actually what different vendors are providing, which functionalities to analyze data? For that, let's have a look at, let's say, like the blueprint for analyzing data, which is the analytical cycle, right? So actually, like all of, or let's say, like most of the analytical projects go through this cycle, right? Which starts with project assignment, which basically is that you have to frame the problem, so you have to identify a business problem. And then at the next stage, in assignment understanding, you have to translate it into a mathematical problem, right? So you actually have to identify the right mathematical approach if you want to employ machine learning, for example, to the specific business problem. Then you have to define KPIs, so you have to benchmark your solution, basically, to also later be able to decide whether your machine learning solution, your analytics solution is any better than what humans are doing anyways. And then you have to select the right data in the next stage, in data understanding, filtering, integration, right? You have to construct a target variable, so like the attribute that you actually want to forecast. This is sometimes already in a data set, but sometimes you have to construct it yourself. You have to pre-process the data, which is all about data quality, maybe like closing gaps of missing data, removing outliers, like these kinds of processes. Then you visualize your data to maybe gain first insights already into the data set, but also gain an intuition about what's in the data, right? So basically of how you actually have to pre-process data further on to make data ready for further machine learning solutions. Then if you move into the modeling and model validation, there's feature engineering, which means that you enrich your data with additional attributes, which are calculated out of existing attributes, and you also sort of like pre-process data so you could actually feed them into certain machine learning algorithms. Select an error metric to actually decide how far off your machine learning algorithm is, right? Select the typical models that you need for your task at hand. Select the validation strategy. So basically like which data you would use for training algorithms, which ones for testing algorithms. Tune your models. So tweak the parameters so you could actually come up with better quality. Evaluate these models, and then in the next step, you have to interpret the output, which is usually quite technical. So you have to translate it into sort of business language, compare it against the baseline, and decide on operationalization. So it's a lot of tasks, right, that need to be supported in order to actually conduct data analysis, right? And the business analyst actually is usually sort of involved into the prototyping cycle, right? If we move further on here, if you decide on operationalization, basically that's about integrating a solution, an analytical solution, into operational systems and operational processes. So this is more what data scientists and also IT departments are concerned with then. So let's have a look actually what kind of functionalities currently the BI market provides to support business users to conduct all these tasks here in data analysis. So on the one hand, and I would say like we have round about like 4 classes of functionalities. We have integrated functionalities. Those are integrated libraries that certain software packages provide for example, data preparation, such as joining, aggregating data, and also some algorithms for forecasting, time series, for example, or some classification. Usually, these algorithms are fairly simple, I mean, like usually you find something like a decision tree or a linear regression model. So it's not like these cutting-edge models that you nowadays find also in machine learning solutions. Another feature is basically user support. So software packages provide suggestions for visualizations for data. So basically, depending on the type of data at hand, if it's categorical or continuous, the software decides on or suggests which kind of visualization would be most appropriate. And also some suggestions for data joining, so which ones are the key columns, or improving data quality, where there are specific problems in data quality. So you know as a user actually, like where are actually the problems in your data set. And there are natural language queries. So natural language queries are quite interesting because they really provide an opportunity to interact with analytical systems in a different way. I mean, it's basically all about interacting with analytical systems such as you would do with Siri or with Alexa, right? These systems are quite interesting, especially if you have a lot of structured but also unstructured information at hand. And I guess as companies, which they're just starting about, are integrating more and more the data sources in the company, these features also, natural language queries, will become more and more productive and interesting. The next class is autonomous software modules. So to a certain extent, and this is not very sort of distributed, but to a certain extent you also find automated forecasting modules. So there are maybe like 5 or 6 algorithms which are run brute force over time series, for example. There's automated data discovery. So the software actually hints you to certain interesting aspects in the data, some interesting patterns from which you can actually start exploring yourself. And there's some automated reporting, so automated language generation, which basically means that the software generates some text to certain chart types. And last but not least, there are third-party integrations. I mean, this is rather technical, so this is or refers to coding languages such as R or Python, or also like commercial packages such as SPSS or RapidMiner, and IDEs such as notebooks. So this is really like targeted at the data scientist that then could actually develop in his favorite language and deploy it directly into business intelligence solutions. So those are already like a couple of features that are present in current BI solutions that people could use actually to analyze data, right? So if we look actually at the analytical cycle, then we see that the software really supports the business user in pre-processing data, in visualizing data, in selecting an appropriate error metric, selecting models, or also selecting a validation strategy. There are, however, some problems or some issues with current features, because on the one hand, we see that this is mostly about suggesting certain actions, so it's really up to the business user to decide himself what would be the next logical step in data analysis. Then, as I already mentioned, the features are usually quite simplistic. As I said, it's linear regression or decision trees, so it's not these cutting-edge algorithms that provide a high accuracy that are provided here. And usually also these features obscure a lot of information which is quite necessary. Like technical information, such as, for example, which error metric was chosen on the one hand, or also how the backtest actually performed, but information that is actually quite necessary to judge whether the solution really makes sense, whether you really can use it in operational processes. For software actually to enable business analysts to really analyze data, I would think that there needs to be more automation. So there needs to be more automation in the analysis process on the one hand. And there also needs to be an increase in transparency, right? So an increase in transparency referring to certain technical features, technical informations to judge whether actually the model at hand does make sense, right? So whether you could actually use it, whether the accuracy is high enough, and what were the certain measures that were used to judge on this accuracy. Of course, this also means that the business analyst needs to be more knowledgeable about this information, but it's really I think, a co-evolution here between the business analyst becoming more knowledgeable and these features being provided. What we see in the past years is that recent developments are actually going towards that direction. So something called automated machine learning is getting more and more traction on the market. SAP actually, I think, in 2010 or so, was the first company providing such a feature. So automating machine learning, like the entire technical task in a machine learning cycle. And people more or less smiled upon this, right? Because okay, how could you automate these tasks? But now, actually, more and more companies are providing these features, such as RapidMiner. There's also an open source library, such as AutoSKLearn, which is available in Python. And you have certain startups, such as DataRobot or MLJar, that also provide very specific applications around automated machine learning. And automated machine learning actually means that you automate all these technical tasks, right? You feed in a flat file, you specify your target, you specify whether you want to do a regression analysis, so forecast something continuous, or you specify whether you actually want to classify something, and then the software does the rest, right? Preparing the data, closing gaps, missing data, removing outliers. And what you're left with is interpreting the output and, of course, deciding on whether you want to operationalize these tasks. Which, if you look at it, actually sounds as if you could enable business users with these systems, also non-technical users, to do data analysis, to do advanced data analysis. Which is true on the one hand, because, of course, as a business analyst, you don't need to code anymore to also do advanced data analysis, to do data preparation on the one hand. But on the other hand, these features, like these automated machine learning solutions, are not available in business intelligence suites at the moment. So they're usually available in advanced analytics platforms or in specified applications where business users actually cannot use them. But I think this is a trend that actually will emerge over the next 5 years. So more and more business intelligence platforms will include these features as well. And on the other hand, the problem is with these tasks, let's say, or with these features, that there are still some tasks here left in the analytical cycle that you will actually never be able to automate, at least not within the next 10 years or so. So, which is, on the one hand, framing the problem. So this is a human task, basically, deciding on which problem we actually want to solve, which process you want to optimize. Choosing the right mathematical approach, so this is also up to you, and this is maybe sometimes not a trivial task, really, to decide which mathematical approach you actually want to choose to solve a problem. Then selecting the data, and selecting the right data is one thing, but then also deciding on whether there's a bias in the data, whether there's enough data, whether you've selected the right data is a human task here. So which also decides on the outputs then. And then, of course, at the end also comparing it against the baseline, so comparing it against what humans are actually doing in the process. And also deciding on operationalization. So deciding on how you want to operationalize these solutions. So if you want to actually provide only suggestions for business users that they can actually take or also reject, or if you want to automate processes really. And apart from this, also business analysts need to be knowledgeable about what's happening in here. So they really need to be able to know what's under the hood of these machine learning algorithms and these solutions, because using machine learning solutions in operational processes is a lot about trust as well. Right? I mean, people in business departments will ask, why should I trust the algorithm? Why should I not trust my gut feeling? Because I've been working maybe like for 10 years in these processes. So what is the value added here, right? And the more you actually have a black box here, so also the less trust you provide, right? So that's why some knowledge of what is happening in here is definitely essential to also make it explainable to business users. So I think even in the scenario of a high degree of automation of data analysis, you have some abilities, some required abilities of business analysts, which refers on the one hand to business understanding. So there needs to be a sound understanding of data analytics-driven process optimization. So which processes you actually can optimize with data and analytics, data-based. Also, which kind of business models you could actually come up with that are data-driven. So what kind of data products you maybe could actually market. Then there needs to be a data understanding, so a knowledge of like what kind of data are there in the company, what are the issues with these data, how you could integrate them actually, how you could provide them to different parties, yeah, also maybe like to data science teams. Then there is an analytics understanding, of course. So business analysts need to know what kind of mathematical approach needs to be chosen to solve a certain business problem. So for that, they need to have a basic knowledge about analytics, definitely. Need to be able to conduct advanced analytics to a certain extent, and also know how to interpret the results that come out of these solutions, right? Which are fairly technical to some extent. And there also needs to be some technology understanding. So they need to be able to implement new technologies that come up. And the market is evolving rapidly. So business analysts really need to be, like, let's say, a little bit tech savvy to stay on top of these developments. So from the business user side, because we don't see the typical business user being right there right now, I think also which is required is that they increase their skills. Right? So in order to be able to use these solutions and come up with sound solutions. And for that, I think, and this is like something I want to close with, I think it's really necessary that companies start educating, start building up data science teams on the one hand, but also educate business users, right? And a lot of companies are actually now starting initiatives where they do data analytics education within companies, also within business departments. Collaboration is really key, so because what business analysts do in business departments, be it with automated machine learning solutions or also like with business intelligence suites, is a starting point basically. So it's a starting point that actually data scientists then can develop further. So that's why collaboration between the line of business and the data science teams and the IT is pretty much key here. And also communication. I mean, it's a very interdisciplinary task to come up with analytic solutions where people or different parties speak different languages here. So communication is key as well, and there are certain measures how company actually come up with to foster communication, right? Coming up with communities of practice, for example, linking people that analyze data within the company so they can exchange actually are certain ways to encourage this. So with this, I want to end my talk, and I think like there's some time for questions still. Thank you.
Мне кажется, что вот то, о чем шла речь, это представляет элемент планирования, старого, давно забытого планирования. Хоть оперативного, хоть стратегического. Так ли это, по мнению докладчика?
Okay, so the question is, it seems that the idea of this whole process is very tightly connected to planning. Operating planning, strategic planning. So is it like this, and what do you think the connection is?
Well, I mean, it's about strategy, right, in a way, because I mean these developments, of course, take time, and until you really educate business users, you link business users to each other, Of course, analytics is used in planning processes as well. I mean, especially in controlling departments, we see a lot of adaptation of data analytics. But I mean, to the extent that you have to approach these tasks like educating business users, choosing the right technology, making people familiar with the right technology, requires planning. This is indeed so, of course. I mean, I hope I've answered your question because. Hi.
Давайте девушку вперед пропустим, она раньше, а вы следующий.
Добрый день. У меня вопрос достаточно простой. В презентации показывалось, что вы хотите автоматизировать первый этап визуализации данных, да, при их подготовке и анализе. Стоит ли его автоматизировать и не стоит ли его как раз отдать бизнес-аналитику, так как он, как знающий процесс, да, может иначе воспринять эти данные?
So the question is, the talk was about what are options for automating data preparation, visualization, and the question is, do you think it is ultimately worth this work? Maybe it's better to just give information to the business analyst who is a specialist in the domain and let him do his work.
I mean, automation is sort of an approach to overcome a certain threshold, right? And the threshold at the moment is that most business users, also most business analysts, are not able to code. They're not able sort of to do advanced data preparation steps, not familiar with these steps. And so automation is sort of a way for them to overcome this threshold and to get more knowledgeable in this process, right? So, okay, you.
Не совсем об этом сказала. Возможно, автоматизация визуализации полезна, но в этот момент, да, там полностью автоматизированный процесс, да, и нет места, где входит, собственно, аналитик, да, и расставляет приоритеты для визуализации.
Давайте правильно ли я понял перед тем, как переводить. То есть вы имеете в виду вопрос такой, допустим, мы уже все автоматизировали, да, у нас уже как бы человек не работает, не является ли вот этой проблемой, что мы как бы аналитиков убрали из этой цепочки и вот все автоматизировано, или я неправильно понял?
Ну, практически, то есть вот там весь процесс автоматизирован, да, и по факту до финальных результатов, да, аналитик не включается. То есть аналитик работает уже с финальной предсказательной моделью, да, вот какой-то. Но при этом этап анализа данных, да, зачастую начинается гораздо раньше, чем вы выдали модель, да, финальную. И подготовка, то, о чем сказал спикер, да, что подготовка данных – это кодинг, да, это правильно, но приоритизация, да, должна, ну, как мне кажется, включаться не на финальном этапе, да, все-таки где-то в середине должны быть входные моменты для бизнес-аналитики.
Попробуйте вот сформулировать вопрос сейчас одной фразой, и я попробую перевести, потому что мне очень трудно.
Or maybe we just take it for the break. I mean, like, so that could be a possibility. And we just link up in the break and then discuss. All right. Yeah, I think it was his turn.
Hello, my name is Nikita. I am dashboard creator. I use Tableau, and I want to say a question about one problem. Можно, пожалуйста, попросить вас тоже помочь перевести вопрос?
Да, конечно.
Я еще раз сказал, что использую табло, и у нас есть такая, например, проблема, когда мы собираем требования, да, с клиента, и мы упираемся в такую проблему, когда используют BI-инструмент как инструмент отчетности, а не инструмент анализа. Это можно понять проблему в том, что, может быть, культура инфографики, ну, не так развита еще пока что в наших бизнесменов. Хотел бы узнать, как с этим, какие подходы используют за рубежом для того, чтобы привлечь клиента использовать более рационально этот инструмент. Не как отчетность, чтобы синтегрировать данные и перевести в Excel и отправить дальше более высокому менеджменту, а именно, чтобы использовать действительно эффективные, интересные визуализации и для более удобного анализа. Спасибо.
Okay, so this is a very practical question, and I think it would be interesting for many of us. So the company has experience of using BI tool, namely Tableau, but it's more used by business users as a pure reporting tool, like take data, copy to Excel, then send to management, not like analytical tools. And the question is, what approaches do you know or you can recommend for engaging business users in more advanced analytic process, not just take data, export and...
Well, I mean, to our experience, I mean, there are usually in many business departments people that are eager to do some more advanced stuff with data, like to get their hands dirty with data analysis, right? The problem they're encountering is that they usually don't get the data. Like, I mean, you know, usually they don't have access to the data warehouse or the data lake, even if in the case that there is a data lake, right? I mean, it requires access to data. And they lack some basic skills, right? So it's really about access to data is the one thing usually, and then also some building up some basic knowledge about data analysis, the possibilities of data analysis. One thing, and then the other thing is also sort of like, you know, this comes from management, from the side of management, is that you actually say, okay, you know, business users should analyze data. I mean, they should dedicate a certain amount of their time to come up with new ideas based on data, right? So it's really from top down and bottom up, you know, bottom up being like the access to data and some basic knowledge, and top down really also like that management says that there should this should be done, right, in business departments. So this is sort of my experience, you know. If you remove these obstacles, business users actually are quite eager to analyze data. Not all of them, of course, but certainly a couple of them that are already working in a more advanced way with Tableau maybe, or maybe even with Excel, right? So they're actually quite eager to overcome the thresholds that these tools provide them. Right.
Меня зовут Алекс. Я бизнес-тренер на английском языке. Во-первых, спасибо вам большое за ваш очень интересный доклад. В принципе, вот мы проводим как раз семинары по как использовать IT для повышения конкурентоспособности и развития бизнеса. И всегда возникает такой вопрос во время нашего семинара, потому что он идет как дискуссионного, консультационного формата. Да? Вопрос именно всегда цена вопроса. Да? Значит, зачастую это известно, что не всегда по той или иной причине, да, вот, значит, вложение в IT, да, окупается. Да? В связи с этим у меня к вам есть вопрос. Значит, на каком этапе, значит, насколько процент должно быть автоматизации вообще, в зависимости от того, значит, какой сегмент бизнеса, да, находится компания, допустим, средний, малый бизнес, да, как они должны планировать свой бюджет, чтобы оправдать именно инвестиции, чтобы она окупаться, потому что...
Алекс, спасибо, да? Я
да.
Боюсь, что если вы продолжите, я уже забуду, что было вначале, не смогу все перевести. Давайте я переведу. So the question is, so obviously when you buy analytical tools, hire data science analysts, these are costs for your organization. And the question is, how do you justify these costs? How do you know what budget you need to allocate for data analytics? And the second question is it different for small and medium business and for big?
Секундочку, да, и продолжение короткое, да? Вы знаете, это одна из, кстати, тоже проблем в том, что это одно, во-первых, кстати, это еще надо определить, как именно делать контракт, да, именно проект. Значит, как выбирать тоже, как сказать, вендор, да? Это тоже вопрос очень важный тоже. Как это, опять же, зависит от сегмента рынка, да? И как компания может эффективно использовать вот это данные, потому что это одно, то, что у тебя все как сказать, очень хорошо автоматизирован, но если ты не можешь этой информации, да, если у тебя нет внутренней, как сказать, бизнес-аналитики, который может правильно интерпретировать эти данные, чтобы ты мог на основе этих данных, да, получить, то есть повысить конкурентоспособность, эффективность, операционную действенность твоей компании. Это то же самое.
Олег,
да?
спасибо. Да.
И последний. Это было, вот Россия провела блестящий чемпионат мира. Считается, что вот за существование этого, как сказать, чемпионата, что Россия, вот это уникально, да? В связи с этим как раз, вы знаете, что, я не знаю, если вы лично были на этом чемпионате.
Okay, so Alex, I think the question was, what is your favorite team in the championship?
Нет, это не то, что я хотел задать. Нет.
Коллеги, давайте чемпионат мира отдельно обсудим, не об этом немножко конференция. Вот я бы хотела сейчас, извините, мне бы хотелось задать вот коллегам.
В плане автоматизации Россия себе блестяще показала, что Германии есть на чем научиться в России. И другие западные страны. Да, спасибо большое.
Коллеги, давайте все-таки попросим, вот вопрос был задан, попросим на него ответить. So the question is how to justify the investments in analytics. I think it's a very important question.
How do you justify the investments? Like, you know, easy question or like short answer, nobody knows really, right? Because nobody, I mean, there's very few experiences on what are the benefits really. I mean, very few companies actually have come to the stage where they really operationalize analytical solutions and maybe automate processes or support certain processes data-based. You know, so this is a learning process that most companies are in right now. So that's why it's also difficult to say. It's individual for every company, and companies really need to start to get experience. I mean, that's the point. For certain solutions, you could actually like do sort of like, you know, ROI calculations, right? I mean, for demand forecasting, for example. I mean, this is possible. Other solutions, you know, other analytical solutions might just be linked to company strategy, right? So it's difficult to really justify. I mean, I give you an example. I was just recently talking to Scout24, which is a big online company in Germany, and they provide a portal for like for flats, where you can basically, you know, sell flats, for example. So for real estate. And they actually introduced a feature for image recognition. So you could actually like go around in the flat you want to sell, and by image recognition, you know, it sort of like fills out a certain form. And it's all about customer experience providing this feature, right? They can't really tell how many more customers are actually selling on their platform versus other platforms, right? It's about providing a superior customer experience. So it's hard to quantify. So you have both cases actually, where you could maybe like justify the investment, you know, because it brings a certain ROI. But you have also other cases where it's just a strategic investment that you do. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Добрый день. Я следующая, пожалуй, я быстро. Значит, вопрос о темпах роста рынка. Вы упоминали 3 сегмента рынка, тесно связанных между собой в самом начале. Сказали, что они быстро растут. И пересечение их растет особенно быстро. Насколько? То есть интересуют темпы рынка, изменения и объемы мирового. Спасибо.
Okay, so the question is related to market growth rates. So you mentioned 3 segments of the market that are growing, and the question is, what are exactly these rates are, and maybe you can indicate some sizes of global markets for this.
I don't have these numbers readily available. I'm sorry. So I can't on out of the top of my head basically come up with these figures. But I mean, I either have it in my laptop, so basically, you know, we could see maybe later on. If not, I also can sort of like, you know, follow up on this definitely if you're interested.
Ну, я могу тоже прокомментировать. Недавно как раз смотрел различные исследования. Ну, порядки здесь такие. То есть традиционный BI, там около 10% объем рост рынка в год. А вот как раз вещи, связанные с продвинутой аналитикой, с аналитикой интернета вещей, с Big Data, там до 30-40%.
Здравствуйте. Вот можно задать такой вопрос? Вы говорили, что вот есть некоторые проблемы, которые в ближайшие 10 лет с помощью бизнес-аналитики не удастся решить. Что это за проблемы? И вот следующий вопрос. Вот квантовые компьютеры, которые вот недавно появились, вот когда они начнут применяться в бизнес-аналитике и насколько они вообще смогут все вот эти вот вопросы решить? И, скажем так, что это даст? Вот применение квантовых компьютеров в бизнес-аналитике. Спасибо.
Okay, the question is consists of two parts. So the first part is you mentioned that there are some analytical tasks and problems that cannot be automated in near like 10 years. What are exactly these problems that cannot be automated? And second part of the question is we know that there is emerging quantum computer technology, and can it help in solving these problems?
Yeah. I mean, like it's all about. I mean, I've sketched out, or tried to sketch out that these technical tasks about training machine learning models, tuning parameters, selecting a validation strategy, you could actually automate these processes. And some companies already are more or less successfully doing this, right? And they provide a starting point. But these quantitative parts, really, I mean, where you identify a problem at first, where you come up with a use case, where you identify the right mathematical approach. I mean, sometimes it's really not that clear if it's a survival analysis or if it's a classification problem. And you do get to very different outcomes if you approach it from the one or the other side. Also, like deciding on whether the data contain a certain bias, right? If you have selected maybe only from a special subgroup data, if the data are really representative for the population you want to forecast or the items you want to forecast, this is something you have to decide beforehand, right? This is something that these solutions can't really provide. And then also at the end, I mean, like it's up to you how you want to operationalize these solutions. As I said, if it's only about providing suggestions to business users, like visualizing certain information, or if it's about automating processes. So that's very specific depending on the process and also on the type of business users, on the data quality, right? So. And quantum computing is probably certainly good to process even more data and also come up with or process even more complicated models, but won't actually help in solving these quantitative tasks. I mean, this really requires some kind of like general artificial intelligence, and I think we're quite a number of years away from that one, I think. So I think these quantitative tasks are really like up to the human within the long term even, I think.
Коллеги, у нас, я думаю, время на один вопрос еще осталось.
Ну вот поступал еще вопрос в приложении, как выбрать компанию, какой подход может быть правильный к выбору компании. Переведете, да?
So the question is when you, as a client, as a company, want to select a service provider or system integrator for outsourcing some analytical tasks for business intelligence, what criteria can you recommend for choosing this integrator and choosing the tool?
Well, first thing is usually that you, or must be actually that you gather what are the requirements from the business, right? And because like technology needs to follow those requirements. So, and this is mostly what hasn't been done. I mean, especially when you look at data analytics, like more advanced analytics. So you have to gather use cases, you have to come up with new ideas, and based on that, you actually decide on which features you need, right? And what kind of data needs to be processed, and what kind of architecture also needs to be supported by these tools. So the natural starting point would really be like gathering those requirements from business units, really, and then come up. And then, of course, I mean, there's a number of sort of like criteria if you look at companies, which can be, like the size of the company, of course, and their track record in a certain industry. But I think this comes afterwards in a way, right? I mean, first thing is really gather the requirements and then look where there's a match, maybe, with different technologies.
Коллеги, сессию вопросов-ответов заканчиваем. Все, да? Последний вопрос. Угу. Хорошо, давайте, да, вот девушка у нас крайняя тут с микрофоном. А остальные вопросы, пожалуйста, пишите в приложение. Мы попросим докладчиков, которым вы задавали вопросы, уже дальше ответить письменно. Организуем.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your presentation. Have you ever measured the level of successful companies that integrated big data or data science in the world, by your opinion, especially from companies Fortune 500?
So if we've quantified, or we try to quantify the value added. Sorry?
The percentage level of successful integration.
So we do regularly do surveys on this, market surveys, and we do not get, I mean, like out of, let's say, like 300 people that you ask, you get maybe like 10 respondents that really are able, you know, or consider themselves to be able to report on a value added that they've achieved. And in terms of revenue increase, the figures usually range something between 2 to 10%. And in cost decrease, sort of it's similar, right? I mean, it's a bit of a range. I mean, my experience personally is that for certain, let's say, like standard use cases, such as, I don't know, like dynamic pricing, for example, automating pricing, for example, or also demand forecasting, it's about like, 1.5, 2% of revenue increase is usually what you can achieve with those solutions, right? And this is based on real projects, basically, right? So I think like it's rather on the 2% side than on a 10% side, but this is sort of like what users report and also what our own experience is in projects.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.